Hey guys, welcome back to this C++ series. In the last video, we looked at if-else and switch case blocks to control flow of a C++ program. In this video, we are going to see how to use loops in C++. While writing any kind of program, it happens very often that you have some piece of code that you want to execute multiple times. Writing that piece of code multiple times is not efficient and maintainable. And to solve this, we use loops. Loops help us to execute a piece of code multiple times. And in C++ there are three types of loops. We have the for loop, the while loop, and then we have the do while loop. Let's start with for loop. So the general syntax for loop is like this. First we write the for keyword followed by a set of brackets. Inside these brackets we have three statements: initialization, condition, and increment. All of them are separated by semicolons. And below this we have the body of this for loop. So init statement can be any valid C++ initialization statement, like int I is equal to 0. Similarly, condition can be any valid C++ expression which can be evaluated to a boolean, like I less than 10. And finally, increment is a statement where you can increase or decrease the value of required variables, like I++ or ++i. So as a whole, what this block does is, it creates and initializes an integer called I with 0. Then it checks if value of I is less than 10. If the value of I is less than 10, the body of this for loop gets executed once. And at the end, it executes the increment statement, increasing the value of I by 1. And all this is called as an iteration. So once the value of I is changed, execution goes to next iteration of this for loop. This time, value of I will be the incremented value, and again it will be checked if I is less than 10. These steps keep on happening in a loop until the value of I becomes 10 or more than 10. So if I print the value of I from within this loop and run this program, you can see that we get these 10 lines printing value of I from 0 to 9. Right now, this integer I is only accessible inside the for loop. If you want to use it outside too, you can declare it before the for loop. And now we'll just have to assign 0 to I. To show you what is the final value of I after this for block, I'll print it here. And now if I run it again, you can see that we again get value of I from 0 to 9. But at the end, we have the final value of I as 10. So what happens is, each for loop runs until the condition becomes false. And in this case, the condition can become false only if I becomes 10. So when I becomes 10, condition evaluates to false, and the code below this for block is executed. Before we move to while loops, I would like to bring up that all the three statements in for loop are optional. You can skip any or all of them. It is perfectly valid to have something like this: no initialization, no condition, and no increment. And this is what we call as an infinite loop. It is called so because there is no exit statement for this for loop, and it will keep on executing until you terminate the program explicitly. It is not very rare to find infinite loops in actual programs, but I personally haven't seen infinite loops written using for loops. Anyways, let's move to the next type of loop, the while loop. So if you understood for loop, while loop will not be much difficult to understand. Basically, in while loops you have the keyword while followed by condition in brackets. This means you have to perform the initialization of loop variable outside the while loop, like this: int I is equal to 0. Then we can write I less than 10 as condition for this while loop. And after performing all the tasks inside the body of this while loop, you have to explicitly write the increment statement. So I'll write I++. If we run this, output will be similar to what we get for loop. Basically, we can always convert a for loop into a while loop. Mostly, it's just a matter of personal preference. One thing that is easier to do with while loops is that you can have a complex logic to increase or decrease value of I. For example, I can very well increase value of I by 2 after each iteration. In that case, our output will be 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. And similar to for loops, you can create an infinite while loop by writing while true. Now, the body of this while will keep on executing until the program terminates. The next type of loop that we have is the do while loop. This, you first write do followed by the body of the loop, and after the body you write while with its exit condition in brackets. Also, always remember that only do while loop needs to have a semicolon at the end. If I run this, we'll get the same output as previous two loops. But there is a major difference between do while and other loops. To show you the difference, I'll change the initial value of I from 0 to 20. And now if I run this, you can see that we get value of I as 20. Now if I would have changed the initial value of I in for loop or while loop, body of those loops would have never gotten executed. But in do while, this works, even though value of I is 20, which is clearly not less than 10. This happens because do while performs condition check at the end of each iteration, unlike for and while loop. So even if condition is false at the very beginning of do while, it will still get executed once. And that is why we are seeing this output here. Apart from these three loops, we also have something known as range-based for loop. These loops can be used to loop over containers from standard template library. Since we haven't seen any use of STL containers yet, I'll just show an example of std string. Let's say we have a std string called myString which contains some string. Now if we want to get characters of this string one by one, we can write for auto.ch myString. And inside the body of this for loop, we can print value of ch. So if I run this, you can see that all the characters of myString are printed vertically one by one. So what happens here is each element of myString gets copied to ch and then we print it. It is also generally a good idea to get characters by reference by adding an ampersand after auto. But as we haven't discussed references and classes, I won't go into much details here. And these were all the ways you can loop in C++. Before ending this video, I'll quickly go over continue and break statements. So let's say in the earlier for loop, I want to skip the code inside the loop when I is an even number. For that, I can add a condition which checks if I is even or not. And if I is even, I can write continue. What this does is, it tells the for loop to skip rest of the code below this continue statement and move to the next iteration. If I run this, you can see that we only get odd values of I from 1 to 9. Basically, we have skipped all the iterations where value of I was even. Next, let's say that instead of skipping some iterations, I want to stop the loop after value of I becomes greater than 5. For that, I'll again add an if check for I greater than 5. And if this is true, I'll write break. This will make the loop terminate once execution reaches break statement. If I run this, you can see that we only get values from 0 to 5. So that was all for this video. On the next video, we'll start looking at what are functions and how to use them. If you liked the video, hit that like button and maybe also subscribe for more such content. I'll hope to see you in the next one.